the avoiding the time of Golus, or it's not necessarily the Mila, but the idea that during the time of Golus, the Yidden serve Hashem with the level of the feet, which is spiritually the level of Netzach V'Hoid, and that's why they will reach Matu Raglin Baraglin, they will attain the level of the feet, meeting up with the feet of Mashiach. And there's both feet, there's the level of Netzach and the level of Hoid. And that has to do with what it says, Kol Doidi Medalig Alaharim, Mekapitz Alagvois. Medalig, skipping, means with 1 foot. Mekapitz means with 2 feet. And this is the uniqueness of the avoida of the time of Golus. So now he's going to go on and explain what it says further in that Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe from Tafshin Tes. Ois Gimel again, 3rd page of the Maimer. Maimer Shom, and he explains over there in that Maimer from Tafshin Tes, the fact during the time of Golus, especially in the generation of the heels of Mashiach, the generation before Mashiach comes, the avoid specifically with Netzach V'Hoid, the level that we said is the level of the feet. Why is it specifically the level of Netzach V'Hoid? Because the great descent and the concealment of the time of exile, in addition to the general idea that we said, and we mentioned this earlier in the Ramorim, that in general there's a descent of generations, not even because of Golus. The first ones were Malachim, so then we're only human beings, like we said before. But in addition to that, in addition to the general descent of all the generations, that every generation is a descent from comparison to the previous generations, here there's an even greater thing. Here there's the descent of the Golus, the concealment of Golus. And that's why therefore the avoid of the Eden has to be specifically from the perspective of Netzach. And we're going to explain that in a moment. What is the level of Netzach? The idea behind this is Netzach is outside of the body, just like we said that the legs are the extremities. These are things that are outside of the trunk. What does that mean? What is the body of a person, both physically and also spiritually? The very being of a person is the brain and the heart. And the heart spreads out and affects to all the sides. The intellect and the emotions is the ikar mitzias of the person. The intellect is demonstrated, corresponds to the level of the head, and the trunk, that's the place of the midas where the heart is. Because the heart is in the middle of the body, middle of the trunk. When we talk about the levels that are outside of the body, those are Netzach V'Hoid, like the extremities, like the legs, are outside of the body. Just like in the general matter of the world. So the world was created fully and complete and totally finished. Same thing in specifics. By a person, he is also created in a way of completion and perfection. There is the meditation in a perfect and complete way. And the brain rules over the heart. That is the way the person was created. That's the way the person was made. And from this meditation, that the person does a full meditation, comes afterwards as almost automatically the birth of the emotions. The feeling that's in the heart. Now, even in that process, which is the perfect man, intellect and emotions and so on, there is still a certain type of transition that we need to go from intellect to the emotions. So he says, "V'noisul is in addition to this, that of the process of going from the full meditation to the emotion, Sorachli is Gama in the Yitzias Mitzrayim, also has to be the idea of going out of Mitzrayim. Shu Inyan HaYitzia Memetzor Agoran is the idea of going out of the confines of the throat. Yitzias Mitzrayim, Meitzar, Mitzrayim is the word Meitzar, constriction. The neck, the throat is narrower than the head even, and definitely more narrow than the body, indicating that for the brain to affect the heart, for the mind to affect the emotions, it still has its own Mitzrayim that it has to go through. As he's about to explain. The idea behind this is that even if you have the full meditation, even when you have been meditating on Alakus, and it's complete, it's full, it's not done like haphazardly. And there is the straits and constraints of the throat. It's the idea of Mitzrayim. These are represented by the three officers of Paroi that we know were in Paro's employ. There was the Sarah Mashkim, Sarah Oifim, and Sarah Tabochim. And these represent the different parts of the throat. There's the food pipe, the air pipe, there's the carotid artery. All of these things have to do with different things that cause a spiritual, what they represent spiritually, causes a blockage, a mitzrayim between the head and the heart. And being that these are the officers of Paroi, they represent that blockage. So he says, what is the three officers of Paroi? What are the three ministers of Paroi? Sar HaMashkim, the butler, the one that's in charge of drink. Shukav Hayimin Delumasa, that is the side, the line of right, the right side of the opposite, the klippa, the Klos HaMashkin Humayim, the general all-inclusive idea of drink, that's water. Umayim, we have right away in the beginning of Tanya, water is matzmichim kol mini tainug, it gives growth to all matters of delight. That is the right and kindness of the other side of klippa. So therefore, that is chesed of klippa. That's the love and desires and taivas of klippa. That could serve as a blockage and not allow for the brain to affect the heart because of my too much investment and enjoyment in klippa. The idea of the sarat habochim, the butcher, is the idea of the boiling bloods in Havridim. That's the arteries where the blood travels through. Idea of the boiling of blood. That's the heat of passion and so on. That's the idea of the bloody butcher, whatever. That's the level of the left. That's gevura. That's those things can block and make a meitzar between my intellectual understanding of Hashem and my emotional development. The Sar HaOifim and the Sar HaOifim, the baker, top of the fourth page, Shinchav Zayin, Hukava Amtsoy, that's the middle line. That's the idea of a central area that combines the two. You have the heat, you have the water, and you have the heat, just like when you bake or when you cook anything, you have both the water and the heat together. Let's explain at length the idea of the three officers in detail in the Avodas Hashem, in the additions to Torah Oir, and this very Maimer of Achron Shal Pesach with the Rebbe Marash in the Hemshech of Maim Ram of the year Tov Lamed Vav. Well, for this reason, there has to be the going out of Mitzrayim. Going out from the confines and the constrictions of the throat. That from the meditation, he should also come about to being inspired and being having his emotions in his heart wake up as well, that they shouldn't be blocked in their traveling from his mind to his heart. In the love of Hashem and the awe of Hashem, and so too that all his other emotions should also be godly instead of being focused on animalistic things. And when his mind influences his heart, and his heart is filled with love and awe and so on, so then he will be filled with matters of Torah, mitzvahs, and holiness, like it's explained in Tanya. Yet, Bisman HaGolus, the time of Golus, the Golus Achar, especially in the doubled darkness of the final Golus, the Achar Dora Bitmia, as we know, there's the Chazal say, is then this generation worthy? Is it appropriate for the Geula, for Bechlal, any type of levels? It's not so easy to become inspired with love and awe based on the rational understanding of meditation. So then we have a different approach. So then the avoid has to be in a way of netzach and hoid, and he's going to explain now specifically what these avoidas are, each one individually. Netzach, which is, like we said before, an extremity, it's outside of the body. The body is the intellect and the emotions. It's the idea of victory and perseverance. Behind this means though intellectually he has no proof and he has nothing forcing him to do so. He also doesn't have any feeling for it. So both intellectually he doesn't have him to drive him to do it, and also emotionally he doesn't have the force that forces him to do it. It's only out of his midah of netzach, perseverance, number 15, where it explains about these midas, the midah of netzach. So therefore, it's something that's outside of the body. It's when the seichel and the midas are not operating, so then you need to resort to netzach. I'm going to persevere despite the fact that I don't have an understanding, despite the fact that I don't have an emotional connection. In a similar vein, it's also the level of hoid. It's also an extremity. It's also outside the body. It's similar to where it says, throughout Gemara and Mishnayos, we have that the Chachamim admitted to Rab Meir. That's the word hoid. Hoid is the word admitting and accepting something, as we're soon going to explain, despite the fact that my mind might not be fully there. And like other, and the rest of the examples for the idea of hoid being admitting and accepting and bittul. This means the afal pishiach, though he might have a different opinion. That's intellect. In a similar vein, he might have a different emotional type of approach. Emotionally, he's not there. Emotionally, he doesn't want this. That's like Inyan Haidav, bittul still, and all he has the idea of admitting, and he has the level of bittul. How come? The kiva shemakir masik ba'plos chachmasik. Since he recognizes and he grasps in the wondrousness of the other person's wisdom, he appreciates how unbelievable that other person's understanding is. So the person sublimates his mind and he admits to him and accepts his view. Until there's a level of haidah sheba haidah, hoid sheba hoid, which is lag ba'imra, as we're soon going to explain. He doesn't grasp in his mind and he doesn't recognize in his heart the great intellect of the other person. Nobody doesn't even begin to appreciate how great that other person's intellect is. All he knows is that he's a very great chacham. Like, for example, there's a there are two ways how you can recognize somebody's great wisdom. Somebody that understands math and science and has a good appreciation of it will be able to explain how amazing and how unbelievable Einstein must have been to come up, let's say, with the theory of relativity. Just for example, because he appreciates and understands these things, so he at least intellectually understands how great Einstein was. How about an ordinary person that doesn't know much math, doesn't know much science? He just knows that Einstein is a great brain. And because of that, if Einstein said it, it's Torah Messinai, because that person is an amazing brain. Who am I I don't even appreciate how amazing his brain is. That's Haid Shabahida. The first one is only Haid itself. The second one is Haid Shabahid, that he's only admitting because he knows that he's so wondrous. Therefore, he admits that it's something that a person needs to accept. You can't argue with Einstein. That's only Haidah Shabahaidah. So now bring this back to what we're talking about, our avoid at present. When we don't have the intellectual capacities of previous generations, we don't have the emotional capacity of previous generations. Therefore, that's the avoid in the time of Golus, in a level of Netzach V'Hoid specifically, until the level of Hoid Shabahid, it's the idea of specifically Haidah Shabahaidah alone. It's in Haid itself, in Haidah itself, it's the lowest level, it's Haidah Shabahaidah. Ois Dalet. It's explained in the Mambarim on Lag Ba'omer that which Lag Ba'omer, as we mentioned before, is the date of Haid Shabahid, the idea of Haidah Shabahaidah. Seemingly, Haidah Shabahaidah is a very low level, yet Shedavke Bechinas Haid Shabahid, specifically in the level of Haid Shabahid, Yeshnam Hagiluyim Hayosan Island. There's the most highest revelations possible, Ad Bechinas Haid Atik, reaching even to the level of Haid of Pnimis HaKeser of Atik. V'zeu Indian is Stalkus Rashbi B'Lag Ba'omer. That's why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away specifically on Lag Ba'omer, as we know that the Stalkus is a very high level. The Bisman is Stalkus at the time of the passing of the Rashbi, Hayameir Boy Mebchinas Tachlis Shleimus Ruchai Lamayla Mayla Barum HaMaylos. It's shown in him the ultimate perfection and completion of his spirit, higher and higher, in the most highest of levels, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. The Rebbe always emphasizes that specifically the day of the passing, the most powerful revelations of that tzaddik comes down. Yet, even though it's so high, or because it's so high, it manifests and expresses itself even in the lowest levels. This idea is drawn down and becomes enclosed in the lowest level, specifically the level of Haid Shabahid. From this comes down also in the service of a person to Hashem. Though he's in the state and situation of a double and quadruple darkness, meaning he still did not leave behind the constraints of the throat. The meditation, as we said before, got trapped in the throat, in the transition between the intellect and the emotions. It didn't come down to the heart. Top of and it could be not just didn't the heart receive it. He's lacking also the perfect level of intellect, the perfect level of the heart on their own, except for the issue about the Meitzar HaGoren, the constraints of the throat blocking between the brain and the heart. It's on their own, they're incomplete, imperfect. Still and all, despite these deficiencies, Af became Aymedu ben Nitzachim, still and all, he stands in a state of victory and perseverance. The Muchrach Lasis Kemoishu al Pitoira v'Kein Yakum. He must do the way Torah says, and this is the way it will be. In a similar vein, also the level of height. Although he has reasons and he has all types of proofs, and in other words, not against what would be the way to do things. Who still, and all he admits, until the level of Haidah. The closing, because the general idea behind this is he stays in a complete and total bittul. He doesn't pay attention on what is surrounding him. And nothing has any importance, occupies any place by him. Because it's axiomatic by him. He must do it the way it's according to Torah. Like the matters explained in the service of Hashem in the Maimer of the year Tafshin Tes. So that is the idea of the Hoid, and the Hoid Shabahoid, the Haidah Shabahoidah. There's a davke poil sheyimshach liyes v'nachal of ruach havaya goyim b'chinas Hoida Atik. So that individual person, not only Mashiach, as we said in the beginning of the Maimer, has also the idea of that the Ruach HaVaya comes down on him, that the Ruach HaVaya is the level of Hoida Atik, as we spoke. It comes down in such a way that he skips over the mountains and he jumps over the hills, but with one leg and two legs, that we said before, the two different legs, canal, so level of Netzach V'Hoid, as we said before, that taps into the highest, most levels. So the Rebbe is now going to ask a question. Yes, it's a very high level, but how? How does this high level come to this low level? Ois Hey, second paragraph on the page Shin Chav Ches. This itself needs explanation. Since the level of Netzach V'Hoid are below the head and they're even below the heart, they're outside the body, they're extremities. And therefore, how is it possible that they shall affect something that the brain and the heart did not do? The brain and the heart are not capable of reaching this. All of a sudden, the extremities, something that's lower than the brain and the heart, can accomplish this. That should be resting upon him the Spirit of Hashem. Even more so, even when the brain is working, even when the heart is working, we don't say V'nachal of Ruach Hashem. We're saying only V'nachal of Ruach Hashem when he has no brain, no heart, all he's working is with the extremities. He's just doing it because he's got to do it. And then all of a sudden you say, wow, he has the same Gilu like Mashiach, V'nachal of Ruach Hashem, Hoida Atik comes down on him. How can that be such a thing? But the idea behind this is the Netzach V'Hoid levar megufa, despite the fact that Netzach V'Hoid are extremities outside of the body. The root of Netzach V'Hoid is higher than the rest of the emotions, meaning love and awe of Hashem, and even higher than the intellect that gives birth to the emotions. This also brings down that there's the level of Behema Rabba, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the level of the emotions that are higher than intellect. Netzach V'Hoid is even higher than those emotions that are higher than intellect. Like it says, also the everlasting one of Yisrael will not say falsehood, will not change his mind, because he's not a person to change the mind. So what do we see from this pasuk? The root of the level of Netzach's root is from the level that he is not a man. The Adam Midas. We know that Adam represents both down here below intellect and emotions. That is what the man is. And the same thing, the spiritual levels. So too, it's in the supernal man and the man above. It's talking about the levels of intellect and emotions above. But Netzach, why? The level of that he is not a person is beyond the Adam Elyon. V'kim sheshoyesh b'chinas hanetzach u'b'chinas kiloi adam, who, since the root of the level of netzach is from the level that he's beyond adam, beyond intellect and emotions. V'lachein lo yishakev lo yinochem. Therefore, he will not say falsehood. He will not change his mind. How come? The feature of b'chinas zu lo shayach shu mishtanas klal, because when you're dealing with this level, it's beyond intellect and emotion. No change is possible. So that's why by Netzach V'Hoy they have this amazing power that reaches so high up, as we will explain further in detail tomorrow.